Good evening all, and welcome. Today we've got a brand new topic. The horrors of having entitled parents. And you will be surprised. But anyway, for now it's time for you to all get comfortable and let the darkness take control. This happened to a co-worker, but I was working this night and got a play-by-play as it happened. I work at a fish and chips place. In the middle of the restaurant there is a large fish tank. It's not anything special, but kids like it. One night, to be fair this happens a lot, but this one takes the cake. A table of about 7 people, including 3 kids, 2 very young and 1 under 6, come in and ask for seats near the fish tank. Our server moves the table and seats, and everyone sits down, and menus are handed out. Then the horror begins. It is at this point the youngest child begins barking like a small dog. Not annoying at first, but the parents seem to find it adorable, and encourage it for about 15 minutes while the rest of the building gets migraines. After that, our server checks to see if they're ready to order. She comes towards the point of service machine to ring it in, and I can tell the table is already giving her trouble. She rings in the food and vents about how demanding the 2 young kids' mother is. As we are cooking, the barking child starts barking again. Only this time it quickly escalates to loud, horrible shrieks. Think raptors from Jurassic Park. That sets everyone's teeth on edge. After about 5 solid minutes of the child screaming, while the entitled mother fawned over her like as if she were an angel, we started seeing people becoming visibly uncomfortable. So we decided to give the kid a cup of fruit to keep her quiet. Pro tip: if a restaurant gives your small child a free treat, it's likely because they want to keep them passive and quiet. It worked. But meanwhile, the other small child, the boy, was running around the restaurant banging on the fish tank glass and trying to sneak into the BOH. It's not until he was hitting the tank with cutlery that we decided to say something. The waitress goes, "Ma'am, will you please stop your child from hitting the aquarium like that? If it breaks, he could be injured." Really, we were more worried about the poor fish, but the entitled mother didn't need to know that. "He's just having fun? Why can't you let my son be a kid?" "Like I said, madam, the glass is old and might be fragile. If it broke, your son or daughter might get cut. And you should also like to know, he tried to get into our kitchen." "So what? He likes to watch me cook at home. Just relax and let my boy have his fun." "Ma'am, there are knives, fire, and 350-degree fryers in there. It's not safe." The server goes to scream in the walk-in freezer while we are finishing plating the tables. She comes out with a smile and serves the food, while the entitled mother is nasty to her, making demands for her straws, her extra napkins, as kids kept throwing them on the floor, and making sure she has barely enough time for her other tables. Once the food is out and everyone is eating, everything seems fine. The kids are mercifully quiet. For now. Fast forward about 30 minutes. Everyone is about to leave. The big table and the few smaller tables we also had, all at the same time. When the server gets to the large table with the debit machine, we see a huge, nasty smear of every sauce the boy had on that side of the table on the fish tank. She decides not to say anything, just deal with it after the table's gone. That's when another person in the group chimed in. "Aren't you gonna clean that mess up?" gesturing to the fish tank. The entitled mother goes, "Why would I? They get paid to do that." She later told me that if the table hadn't been leaving, she would have had some choice words to say, and damn the consequences. I don't know how this girl managed not to strangle the mother in front of her kids, but she did. Also, no tip from the entitled mother. Luckily, some of the other tables saw her bad attitude and gave the server big tips. Moral of the story: servers, do not get paid less than minimum wage to clean up after your crappy parenting. Learn to control your goblets, or don't go out in public. Some backstory. This is rather recent. It was at the end of 2018. I was 16 and my boyfriend was 18. And before you guys say anything, in Norway you are legal, but at 16 your parents decide if you can date 18 plus or not. But my parents allowed it. I'm a guy, if that wasn't clear enough. We'd been friends for about 5 years before, and we newly got together. We were going to do our last Christmas shopping before Christmas Eve, so we were going to Oslo, the capital of Norway, to make it a shopping trip / date. We were also going to stay one night at a hotel. We had saved it for a while now, and we had to travel quite a bit and had to take a night bus. We entered the bus and sit beside each other. Then the entitled mother, entitled father, and the nice kid, he was around 8 or 9, entered the bus and sit on the row beside us. The father sat a row in front of them, since each row could only fit 2 people. Me and my boyfriend just chat for a bit, smiling and laughing. It wasn't really anything special, so they wouldn't have known that we were gay. But as soon as I placed my hand softly on his, I could almost feel someone's stare burning down on my hand. I look over, and I see the entitled mother, and saw her staring at my hand. She then asks me, "Why are you two holding hands?" "We're dating." My boyfriend looked over at her as well. The mother held her arm in front of her child, as if we were threatening or something like that. The entitled mother goes, "Can you two please not do that in front of my child? I don't want him seeing that." I just looked at her in shock, and I really wanted to say something very mean back, but the bus was a bit crowded, so people were looking over their seats to try and see what all the fuss was about. My boyfriend scoffed and looked at her, already slightly ticked off. "Excuse me, what's wrong with me holding my boyfriend's hand?" He put extra pressure on the word boyfriend to annoy her. The dad also turned his head around now. "I don't want my son to become gay. I don't want him to grow up a sinner," she said. "But Mom, our teacher told us that liking boys is okay." "Well, your teacher isn't always right, son." My boyfriend had just about had it. He can get a bit aggressive sometimes, but I usually stop him. But at the moment I wasn't feeling like it. My boyfriend stood up and told the lady with a nice and sweet tone in his voice, "Well, if you have a problem with us being gay, what would you do with your own son if he became gay? Disown him?" The entitled dad stood up and gave my boyfriend an angry look. My boyfriend is rather tall, about 6'1", and quite muscular, while I am only 5'4", and a bit feminine. Most people say I look androgynous. The father then raises his voice at him. "How dare you talk to my son like that? You better sit down or I'll have to make you." Now my boyfriend's face goes red with anger, and I step in front. "Darling, please sit down. I don't want to get into trouble." The bus driver comes to us. "What's the problem here, sir?" "These 2 kids are harassing me, my wife and my child." The bus driver faces us. "Is this true?" "No, rather the opposite. They've both been harassing us with their homophobic behavior. They even threatened my boyfriend." The bus driver believes us, due to the fact that the entitled father used such colourful language. He checked through the footage they had from the bus camera, and when the entitled father and entitled mother knew they were busted, they ran off. They even left the kid behind. The kid apologized for his parents' behavior. The police were called and later arrived to pick up the child with the parents in the back. They got a fine for harassment, I think. I work IT for a small company. I support about 25 people in total. Anything tech-related owned by the company, and I am involved in it. I like my job. Most of the folks working here are good people, even though some of them are very difficult to train on computers. The entitled parent is a middle-aged woman, who, as far as I can tell, gets paid more than I do to do about 45 minutes of work a day, that she stretches into a full 8-hour shift. She can't really even do that 45 minutes of work correctly most of the time, and I've had to come and retrain her on the software we use several times a month. The entitled parent also refuses to listen when I am helping her with tech issues, and has something new to complain about to me every week. I'm told she only got the job because her dad and the owner of the company are old drinking buddies. Well, as annoying as she is, I was almost able to completely ignore her until the incident last week. I'm in my office working on something, when the entitled parent comes in with a laptop, cables and an iPad. She sets them down on my desk and just looks at me without saying a word. What is this? It's my son's laptop and iPad. We're having trouble. Can you fix them? Sorry, I don't work on personal devices. If it isn't owned by the company, I won't work on it. You have to go take it to a shop or something. Oh, come on. You fix this kind of stuff all the time. I bet it'll take you 5 to 10 minutes tops to get it running. Then you can go back to whatever else you want to fix. I start pushing back the items. Sorry, not happening. She turns several shades of purple and red at this point. What the hell is wrong with you? You sit around all day doing nothing, and when you finally come out of your office to fix things that you obviously screwed up because you're incompetent, just fix the things so I can take them home and use them again. I don't even know why the owner keeps you around. You're so useless. Yeah, I'm gonna have to ask you to leave my office so I can get back to work. I'm going back to work on things, and the entitled parent grabs her stuff and storms out, slamming my door behind her. I get a call about 20 minutes later from the owner, asking why the entitled parent was demanding I be fired. She had told him that I had laughed in her face and refused to help her. She even said I threatened to never help her with IT problems at work again. Because I was mad, she called me out on being lazy. I explained what actually happened and offered to send the owner a copy of the camera footage of the entire incident, since there is a camera overlooking my entire office. The owner requested the footage, so I sent it to him. The next day, I realize the entitled parent isn't there. I ask around, and apparently the owner called her into his office and spoke with her about the incident. She tried to double down on her lies when the owner showed her the footage, including audio, and caught her in the lie. He then offered to let her take some time off to cool her head before coming back to work, but that he'd expect her to make an apology to me for her behavior. This enraged the entitled parent, who everyone could hear screaming through the closed doors about how awful a person I was. She stormed out of the owner's office, grabbed her things, and shouted that she quit before leaving. So she's gone for good. She was so unwilling to open up about her own poor behavior and apologize to me that she threw away a cushy job making more money than she is likely to make anywhere else around here. What a moron. On the plus side, without her here constantly complaining, I'm getting a bit more work done each day. This was about 9 years ago. I was 13 years old. So, I was in a clothing shop, and I went on to try a new outfit I wanted. I head over to the changing room, and I noticed the entitled parent and her son walking towards the same changing room that I was going for. I quickened my pace and got in there before them. When I was getting changed, the entitled parent knocked on the door. I asked, "Who is it?" And the entitled parent responds with, "You're taking too long. Hurry up, please." And our conversation went a bit like this. "No, I'm not. I've been here for 2 minutes." "Excuse me? Don't talk to me like that. That's very rude." "It isn't. I'm using the changing room. You have to wait." "Open the door now." "Nope. I'm still getting changed. Wait until I'm done." Plus, why on earth would I open the door when I'm getting dressed? "I don't care. My son needs to use the changing room." "I need to use the changing room. And I got in here first, so you just have to wait." A minute later, I come out of the changing room, and the entitled parent and her kid are just waiting there. "Who the hell do you think you're talking to?" "I was just saying—" "You're so rude." I start getting sick of her BS. "Look, I got in there first, so shut your mouth and wait until I'm finished, you daft prick." She then proceeds to yank the clothes from my hand and throws them on the floor and has the nerve to say, "Pick it up." This is when I lose my cool. I'm quite short-tempered. I grab the clothes on the floor and throw them at the entitled parent. Yes, I shouldn't have done it. And said, "You ignorant twat." I ran out the shop while she was screaming insults at me. Luckily, she didn't follow. And I felt proud at first, but now I realize I should have just gone and told someone who works there and let them deal with it. No, nobody was hurt, and I never saw her after the incident. This story happened about 15 years ago in a liquor store in a suburb of Stockholm, Sweden. Now these stores get really crowded on Fridays and Saturdays because they are the only stores allowed to sell alcohol. Lines could get really long, up to an hour if you came in at the wrong time. Some of them also had counters where you ordered your goods and the cashier/teller would just go and get the goods for you. Nowadays it's more like a normal store and the lines are much shorter. This fine spring Saturday, around 1 hour from closing time, entitled Dad comes up to a register before it's his turn and asks for his son of around 7 or so to use the bathroom. Entitled Dad is a television personality, quite well known and a regular customer too. He goes, "Hello, I'm sorry, but can I please take my son to the bathroom? He really needs to go." The cashier replies, "I'm so sorry, but we don't have a customer bathroom. We can't allow you back there, and none of us are free to take him, as we're quite busy and all of us are manning the registers right now." The entitled Dad goes, "But he really needs to go. It'll be quick. Why can't you take him?" The cashier replies, "I'm sorry, but we really can't. Besides us being so busy, it's a liability issue. Our storage area is not a safe place for children, with heavy machinery, possible glass and splinters on the floor and whatnot. I hope you understand." They argue back and forth for several minutes, at which point the son chimes in very distressed, "Daddy, I really need to pee." "See how upset he is. How can you be so heartless?" "I'm sorry you feel that way, but we really can't. However, there is a fast food restaurant not 1 minute away through that door. I'm sure they'll let you use their public bathroom." "Why would I leave my place in the queue because you're so unhelpful? We could be done by now if it wasn't for you." The son then starts to pee himself and cry. "See? This is your fault. How can you be so evil? I'll report you. Don't you know who I am?" And then they left. Ever since I was a young child, I went to my grandparents. This was mainly due to the fact that they agreed to look after me while my parents worked till very late. Back then, I had no clue what kind of person my grandmother was, as, I will be honest, my grandfather was always a nice man. The only issue with him was that he was easily pushed around by my grandmother. Now, as stated, at the time I had no clue about how she was behind closed doors, as parents like to shield their children from seeing the bad side. I have learnt over the years a lot, and seen even more now, but I will be going over it all. Now over the years I'm growing up, and by the time I'm 10, I begin to realise we've been going up to see them less and less. So I ask my parents about it, and they just tell me they are busy lately, and smile before we continue for our day. Less than a week later, we head up. At this point I'm 10 years of age, and have 2 sisters who come with me, and are both younger than me, one being 8 and the other being 6. My mother, it's her mother so she comes most of the time, me and my sisters escape to see my grandfather, while my mother and grandmother talk. We head back in less than 5 minutes, and I hear them shouting, and suddenly my grandmother is shouting about how spoilt our family is, and how she gets nothing and deserves more, and she is only a poor old lady. To give you some context, my family is in debt, and have been for a long time to get by, and give us the best chance at life. At this time my parents have no jobs, as my mother is a carer for my father, as he's come down with depression, and it is clinical, so he can't work anymore. She somehow takes from this that she deserves anything we have. We get pushed to the door, and it becomes a shouting match between my mother and my grandmother. My grandfather just tells us to go, and we promptly call my father to come and collect us, and we leave. Fast forward a few more years. My mother went running back to her as she always does a couple of days after. I'm 17 now, and I have learnt a lot about my grandmother, and this is what I learnt about the woman. My mother apparently warned my father not to be offended when they first met, but that my grandmother would never like him, because he did not have money and wouldn't be able to treat her to things. Not my mother, but her. The day that I found that out annoyed me, but more and more just kept popping up. A couple of years back, my grandfather had a heart attack, and this hurt my mother a lot. So we went up to the hospital, and no matter how much resentment my father had against her, he offered to take her up to see her husband. But no, she wouldn't go. What's worse is that after my mother came back home, she found out that my grandmother made my grandfather call the ambulance while he was having a heart attack. The nerve of this woman. Now yes, I admit she has some issues with her legs, but the main issue is that she had a phone next to her bed, where she is always sat. Her excuse got me the most. Why should I do it? It's not for me, it's for him. I promised I would not go up again, but once again my mother pushed me into it. Now, as well as my mother, she had a sister, my auntie. I say it lightly as I never see or hear from her or my cousins, but she is this golden child, and she was older than my mother, but she got what she wanted. According to my mother, when she was younger, at 7 years of age, she did all the cleaning from the dishes to the garden, all because her sister never did anything. Once again, another thing that irritated us about my grandmother and auntie. So here we go to one of the worst things yet to my knowledge, which I will never forget. We go up, me and my youngest sister, and I'm 18, and we want to avoid my grandmother and just talk to my grandfather while I have to be there. I go in and spend time with my grandfather until I hear something from the other room, at which point I stand up and go and check. I hear my grandmother saying as I walk into the door, "You know your husband sexually assaulted me and cheated on his ex-wife." I was in shock. For context on this story, my dad's ex-wife left him for his own brother, who she was cheating on my father with. This angered me to hear. One, his ex is lying about him, and to hear my grandmother say that crap. I get to the door, as I see my sister looking shocked, and my mum just says, "You what? Do you even know the full story of what his ex did? Do you even know what happened?" I doubt it. "And where did you even hear this?" My grandmother responds hostile. "Your sister is friends with her, and I believe her over him any day." My blood began to boil, as she kept calling my father all these horrible things, and my mother got up and looked at my younger sister, who at the time was in tears, and walked out of the house with me following. We got home, boiled in anger, and told my father, who said he will never see her again, as did me and my younger sister. Now, my grandmother is and always has been focused on herself during every moment of her life. She would never lift a finger and wanted the world given to her on a silver platter. This was most evident on birthdays, where she expected hundreds and hundreds worth of pounds to be spent on her, and my mother would always stupidly do it. Yet when it came to anyone else, £5 and a card is more than enough. I mean, what do they need it for? The most common response before saying everyone is selfish. The only exception to this rule was my auntie, and as I said, she's the favourite of the family. The reason being my grandparents decided they were going to leave everything to them from a young age, saying how my cousins were going to go so much further in life than me. Well, this leads me on to the last time I saw her, less than a month ago, where I got good old-fashioned revenge, and for once, my mother helped me. So my mother was going up to my grandmother's one day and asked if I'd join. Take into consideration that I'm 20. I don't want to, nor have to go, and I stated, and she understood. But at that moment, my dad turned to me and went, "No, go." Me and my mother looked at him. He grinned before saying, "Well, your favourite cousins have made a mess of their education and got girls pregnant and had to drop out of education at 18. He has a job cleaning up after people to try and support the child, and my grandparents hated it. So my dad had piqued my interest, so I asked what he had in mind. He dropped the bombshell. Well, you just got accepted into the University for Higher Level Computing. I think it's time you show them that you're the one who's succeeding in life, and you aren't going to give a penny of it to that old cow." All I could do is smile and laugh, as I agreed, and my mother was surprisingly in on it. We went on to my grandfather answering the door, as he always did, and my grandmother looking intrigued at what cake my mother brought, as my grandfather even thought my mother knew she would turn around and say, "Oh, that's far too much for him. I shall have it to keep him fit and healthy." Take into consideration this is a whole cake. As always, she did this, and for a change, she only got £30 and a card from us, as we were struggling with money. She complained, saying, "What is she supposed to do with that? And how it's not good enough for her to buy anything with?" I sighed and rolled my eyes before saying, "So, how are my amazing cousins doing that you love so much?" As all I get back from her is, "Oh, they're good. I don't hear from them that much, but I don't hear from you either." I turned my head to my mother and smiled before saying to her, "Oh yes, grandmother. I haven't been up for a long time due to the fact that I've been studying. It's paying off. I've just gotten into the university after this year of college due to my grades being so good. She looked shocked beyond belief, and I just continued. It's quite a good university as well, and with what I'm going to be doing, it'll earn quite a lot of money. It's an IT course going all the way up to L6 and has cybersecurity, etc. It's decent money and quite fun to learn. Her first response just made me laugh and mildly irritated, as all she said was, "Well, remember to give some to your poor grandmother who gets nothing." I looked at her and then walked out to my grandfather, who was quite proud of me, but, as I said, he is quite nice and reasonable at times. As I was leaving, all I could hear was my mother bragging to my grandmother, and I was smiling all the time. Revenge felt sweet. And after about half an hour, I stood up and told my grandmother that it was time for us to be going, as my father was sat waiting in the car outside to take us home. I looked at my grandmother, who said bye and then walked out. That is the last time I hope to ever hear from her again. I know this is an odd story, but she is as entitled as hell. At least she had a positive impact, and still continues to have one to this day. My parents are divorced and live in 2 different cities. For a 2-week period during the summer of 2017, when I was 17, I took the bus about 1 hour each way to my dad's house to feed the cat, while he and his girlfriend were on vacation. It is technically my cat, but I don't live with my dad anymore and weren't allowed to bring her to my mum, so I consider it equally theirs at this point. I took the bus every other day, and originally his girlfriend's daughter, who lives nearby and who is an adult with a car, was going to feed the cat as well, but nothing came of it. On my 7th and final visit to my dad's house, I apparently forgot to let the cat out of the house, which resulted in it crapping and destroying the couch. Once my dad came home and found this out, he called me and was infuriated. I apologized and was shocked because I always remembered letting her out before previously. My dad didn't accept my apology and said I should have done better. I told him I understood his frustration and that he was probably right, but that it was unreasonable of him to ignore the rest of the times I went there, despite it not really being my responsibility. He completely disagreed, and it ended in us not talking to each other for about half a year. I told my mum I thought he was unreasonable, and she agreed, although she tried to stay out of it. During this period at one point, my dad threatened to drive over there while I was at my mum's empty house, as they were on vacation at this time, because I didn't reply to his phone calls. He never came, but I remember being scared. He never threatened me or hurt me in any way, but he sometimes has psychopathic traits. I attempted sending him long messages hoping he would understand, but in the end I just gave up on the whole thing and let it be. Fast forward sometime during December of that year, and my dad reached out to me telling me the cat had become seriously ill, and that she could probably die soon. I always consider her to be my sister, because I've had her since '06 and don't have any siblings, and my dad always worked late. So I went over there, which began us reconnecting. The cat had to be fed medicine and taken care of, and I didn't want them to give up on her. So I began staying over there more and more that month. I told him pretty clearly that we could begin building a relationship again, but that we wouldn't forget what happened, and that we would talk about it sometime in the future. Still, we both kind of forgot until the late summer of 2018, when I somehow stumbled onto the subject on a car ride. I was really surprised and disappointed in him, still feeling the exact same way. He wouldn't admit it being good of me to come every day in the first place, having spent many hours as I had travelling back and forth. Again, I tried the, sure I shouldn't have forgotten the cat the last time, and I get the sofa was really expensive and all, but your girlfriend's daughter, with a car, never stopped by like she said she would. But no, you still didn't do a good enough job. So basically, I'm at this skate park with 3 of my friends, just having a good time. I get up and go to run for a bit off this ramp. I'm about to round this corner, and this mad kid between 8 and 12 is walking across the skate pool on his iPad with headphones in. I ran into him since there was no other option than throw myself off the skateboard headfirst into a rail pipe. We both fall, and I quickly get up and apologize. The mad kid starts crying and trying to hit me. I back away and pick up my board. Then the entitled mother starts running up to me, swearing up and down that she would kill me if I ever touched her kid again, and blah blah blah. Then I walk off to the resting benches and try and sit down while this chick is frantically cussing at me. Bear in mind I'm 15, and out of nowhere she takes my board and throws it into the pool, where it hits a little kid and seemingly injures him. This is all actually caught on camera by my friend, who later turns it into the police. The little injured kid was on a scooter and had a scrape from the board hitting his arm. The entitled mother runs and gets the board, all the while I'm phoning the police about a crazy woman who is in need of mental help. Then she goes on about how her kid needs the board because he's been getting good grades and I hit him, so it should be an apology gift. I say no and to give me back my board and try to take it back while still on the phone with the police. My friend Luke comes up behind the woman and snatches the board away from her. This is where she goes ballistic and tries hitting and screaming at Luke. Just as this happens, the police arrive, and the entitled mother and the mad kid run off. They were caught, and she was charged for an assault of a minor. And it was good. Lisa always complained that her mother would take her credit card and use it for clothes, which she would buy for herself, and then just say, "I'm your mother, I can borrow your money," which is really mean since she got it for her birthday. Anywho, my friend invited me to an anime con which was held in Finland, somewhere near Oulu, or something. A long drive since we both live in Vantaa. It's about a 6-hour drive. I was happy that she wanted me to come along, since we didn't really have much time to hang out. So I said yes, agreeing to pay for my own ticket and such, until she said that her mother wanted me to pay for a hotel room, which cost about 500 euros for 3 days. I had to decline then, but then she said that her mother didn't want to pay for a hotel either, so they were going to be staying at their grandmother's, and told me that she was happy to let me stay for free. Until a few hours later, Lisa said her mother wanted me to pay 35 euros for rent. So I'd have to pay about 60 euros for my part, the ticket, and the rent. I was pretty okay with it since I'd gotten my allowance. But then, out of nowhere, her mother wanted me to pay for gas, another 60. I said I didn't have enough already, and sadly, I had to decline. My friend was also sad, since she couldn't invite anyone else, because nobody was free at the time, vacations and such. Then her mother told me that I wouldn't have to pay for gas. She's changed her mind. She wanted me to pay for the entire trip, including the so-called rent. Okay, I felt like she just didn't want me to come at all, which upset Lisa. She ended up going alone, though she met Joey, the anime man, and someone else. She even took pictures with them, so I was happy for her that she met someone she was a fan of. Lisa has told me many times before that her mother is the kind of person who is after money, though her family was quite rich, She even said that her mother nearly got married to a sugar daddy. That's probably it. So I live in a country where Nintendo Switch isn't popular, and people would mistake it as a small toy that costs $5. And my friend has one. So my friend lives far from the school. One day he was bored, and the traffic was bad, so he decides to get out his Switch, and an entitled parent that is sitting beside him with her entitled son next to her asks what game I was playing. I told them that it was Mario Kart. I'm not sure what game, as my friend didn't specify. He said it looked fun, and that the entitled parent asked nicely if he could play it. Now, the entitled parent and me were getting off at the same station, which is my school street. We are not off the bus yet, but we stood up to get off, and I asked her for my game once we got down, and she said, "My son really likes it. I've never seen him so happy with a game like this." I told her I'm happy for him that he discovered a game he likes, and that he can buy it from the store about 10 minutes away. She offered me $5 for the Switch. Yes, $5. I told her it cost me $400, and that I'm not selling it. Here she thought I was lying, and said, "This little game doesn't cost $400. Stop lying." I tell her I don't care how much you think it costs. It's my game, and to give it back, please. She didn't reply, and gave me a dirty look, and walks as I grab her son's hand and tell him to give me my game back. At this point, the jerk beside me tells me that it's just a game and to let it go, as I was already an adult, even though I was 13 at the time. She tells the jerk that I am rude and a piece of crap. At this point I'm super pissed and just snatch the game from the kid's hand and get off the bus while walking fast, but not running. She literally runs behind me to grab my hand so hard and takes my game. I tell her I want it back, and she slaps me and yells that she won't give it to me. I was kind of popular at this street since it's my school street, so I tell her to give me my game and to not steal it, and then she yells again and starts calling me a thief. People in the street started asking about what happened. She told them that I want $400 for this game, and I told her no, I don't want that, I want my game back. Then, someone we didn't know grabbed the mother from behind the neck and slapped her 3 times for calling her a thief, and the police were called by her friend, and the police investigated, and she admitted that the game was $5 and that she wanted to buy it, and that I was not willing to sell it to her. And I said no, I didn't want to sell it, and it's not $5, it's $400. She gets mad every time I mention the number 400 for some reason. Anyway, she was arrested after we checked the camera footage for aggressive behavior. I don't know what happened to her, but I assume she got out, because the law in this country is broken. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. I know this isn't the usual type of video I make, but I've seen this thread on Reddit get lots of attention lately. So I thought I'd share some of the stories that the kind people over there have to share as well. And I do hope you enjoyed. If you like these kind of stories, I'm more than happy to make a follow-up video pretty soon, as I have a fair amount of these left over in my arsenal. If you enjoy the video, please do not forget to drop a like and leave a comment with your thoughts, and let me know if you want me to do this topic again. Don't forget that you could also subscribe and press the little bell icon to be up to date every time I post, which is roughly the same time every night. And that way, you don't miss your nightly spooks. If there's a story that you would like to share, you can send it to my email or post it to my Reddit. Oh, and a word to all the people who applied for comment moderator. Thank you all so much for applying. Entries are now closed. Future emails, I'm afraid I'm not going to take them because so many of you have replied, and it's overwhelming the amount of support and help that you guys are willing to chip in. So thank you so much to everyone who's agreed to help. I'm still sifting through the emails. It's been a really busy few days, but I think by the weekend all the moderators should have moderator status, which will be pretty cool. But anyway, for now guys, I'm gonna sign off. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.